going to start by saying that we're assuming you have used accordance, you do know your way around accordance, and you do know the basic Hebrew searches, and you can read Hebrew. This is supposed to be an advanced class, but I am going to be reviewing, quickly summarizing the basics of Hebrew, because inevitably otherwise we find somebody who says, but what do you mean by an inflected form, or what do you mean by this? I'm going to go quite fast if it's, at least especially at the beginning, because I don't want to get bogged down in the basics and not get to the advanced. I've chosen as my text, the text we're going to look at, and as a starting point, Psalm 1. So here we have the Hebrew Bible open on the screen. I'm using the mouse posé, so you will see I've got a larger cursor. When I click right, a normal click is going to be red. When I do a right click, it's going to be green. And the little light will tell you, help you to find the cursor. Need it bigger or brighter, you can tell me, but I didn't want to black out the rest of it. And so these are the settings I've chosen. Now you should know already that to get to Psalm 1, we have two ways of doing it. We can enter it up here, then that's all we have in the window, or we can simply go down here and either pull up Psalms from the list, and this is the go-to box. It's taken us to Psalm 1. I'm just going to read the first two verses of Psalm 1. That's where we're going to be focusing our word studies, on these two verses. Before I do that, I'm going to open in parallel for those who are not as comfortable reading the Hebrew. I hope you all are just completely familiar with reading Hebrew, but you probably, some of you probably are not. So we've got the JPS translation, which I'm using, a Jewish translation that is quite good and does have our key numbers in it so that it links with the Hebrew. And we'll be discussing that in a minute. So I'll go ahead and read it without running the cursor over it. Ashrei ha'ish asher lo halach ba'atzat resha'im, uvederech hata'im lo amad, uvemoshav leitzim lo yashav, ki im b'torat Adonai chetzo, uvetorato yehege yomam v'layla. Okay, those are the first two verses of Psalm 1. Now, the first thing that we're going to look at is actually what is the information, keeping it simple, dissecting the Hebrew word. What information do we have? And the shift key, I can go and point form as it appears in the text, to the text with key numbers. We can search on all of these forms so that with a right click and a search for, we can search basically for the lexeme, which is the easiest. And here it's found the word Ashrei throughout the Bible. So everybody should be familiar. This should not be new to anybody. There are 44 occurrences, and in fact, if we do, before I go there, you notice the word is here. They put an equal sign in front of it. That just means find this lexeme with these vowels. Now, it actually has found one more lexeme with perhaps different vowels when I took off the equals. So that means it was actually a different lexeme. If we do the inflected search, we can go back here, or we could have carried on from there with another right click and search for the inflected. We're going to find that we get a lot more occurrences. We've got 52 because there are other words. In fact, we see right here, this is nothing about fortunate. Asherav means post, the sacred post, the Asherah. And so this sequence of letters can mean totally different things. That's why searching the lexeme is more accurate and specific than searching for the inflected form. But sometimes we do want to look for the inflected form, and accordance defines that search by putting quotes around it. And we can use our equal sign again to say, well, I only want exactly this voweling, and now we'll have fewer. Now we've gone down to 40 that have exactly the same vowels as our original word. All of this, again, should be familiar to everybody. Now, we can also search for the root in exactly the same way. And when we search for the root, it's going to take a little bit longer because there are over 5,000 of them. It's used the plus. So the plus symbol means look for a root with these three characters. How come it's found almost 6,000? Let's see what they are. Again, this should all be revision for you. Sorry, I did the wrong click. Regular click and analysis, and here are all the words that come from the root asher. By the way, I'm the person to blame if you disagree with the Hebrew root, because I put together that part of the database long time ago. Anyway, you see that some of these words are connected, happiness and happy, and to call blessed and blessed, they're obviously related words, but an Asherite and an Ashurite and the tribe of Asher are not necessarily related at all. So that, of course, is a warning to the amateur preacher or the amateur Hebrew scholar who's also a preacher, that just because words have the same root doesn't mean that there's any relation between them, and you need a good lexicon like the Halot or the Theological Dictionary, TDOT, to really sort out where the words come from, what their origin is. We've already, okay, so now if we wanted, though, to narrow this down to our particle interjection, which is what, if you remember, was the tag attached to Ashrei, we can easily do that, and that illustrates for us how to add a tag to a word. We can do it with a right click, and we can do it in the search menu. Either way, enter tag, we choose particle, and whatever part of speech we choose, we can further define. So we're going to choose the interjection class and do an OK, and you notice the @ symbol. And hopefully you all are aware of already the importance of the @. What the @ says is that the Asher root needs to be on the same word as the particle interjection. And now we're back to our 44 occurrences where Ashrei means blessed, and it is the particle interjection. Okay, so that's just a little review of how to do tags. You can also, of course, add the tags without words, and the easiest way to search for a word that you see in the text. Of course, you can also type in the words directly. Now, there is one kind of search which is rather newer that you may have noticed here, and I'm going to do it not on Ashrei but on Ha'ish. So we take Ha'ish and we say search for letters. Now, what does that mean? That means find those 4 letters in a row. Okay? It is not referencing their lexeme, it's not referencing their meaning. And mostly it has found, in fact, the same word, Ha'ish. Okay, it hasn't found Anashim, which it would if we'd done the lexeme. But if we go down to the last verse of the last hit in Numbers, we see that here it's found Isha. It's Isha, her man, and La, the hay, is detached from Ish. And that is the point of the literal search. Now, I just discovered a bug which I passed on to the program, as we always do. When you do demos, you find bugs. This should have switched to letters. This is a letters search. And the reason we put in the letters search is that, as you know, when people begin to study Hebrew, it's very hard to work out what belongs to the word and what does not, what's a prefix and what isn't. And Accordance knows, as you know, put the cursor over the mem here, it's separate from yom. And if there is a suffix like the hey here on ish, her man, it separates it. But when you see the word isha, you don't know, is it Isha, a woman, or is it her man? And especially if you see it in another text, if you see it in a commentary, or you see it quoted in a dictionary, it can be hard to know how to separate that out and put it in quotes in order to search for that word or that phrase. So the big advantage of the literal search is, if you don't know, you can simply copy the phrase into here, choose to search for the letters, it ignores the vowels, and it will find that string of letters, however it's separated, whether it's separated by spaces or whether what we call morphological separators that distinguish the suffix and the prefix from the main word. Okay, I'm going fast, so I want to stop and say, does anybody have a serious question? I would rather you hold your questions till the end because we really can't stop, and there are so many tracks one can take. I mean, studying this is so fascinating. You can go off on all kinds of tags, but hopefully the majority of you understood and followed all of that. We already looked at the use of symbols. So we looked at the @ symbol that connects the word to a tag or to another criterion for searching for that word. We saw the plus symbol for roots, quotes for inflected, equal for exact, I use the vowels. And we haven't used the minus, but we will. That just means that the dash just means a not. I want to go on to using wildcards. Now again, this may have been covered by the other teachers, I don't know, but I think it's really important. So I just want to cover some of the wildcards. The asterisk stands for any word. So one example of that we could use is that we might want to see all the words that follow this word counsel. We notice that this word counsel is in the construct form. That means it's the counsel of somebody else. And so a simple way to find all the words that follow counsel are to go ahead and search for this word. Search for the lexeme, and I'm going to take off the bed. Took the whole word, and with a space, follow it with an asterisk. And so now we have found all the words that follow etzat. But we actually have a problem because I need to put on here the tag that it's a noun and it's in the construct state. Okay, so now we have that we're going to find, this is the ones I want to find, the atzat. What words, what kind of counsel does the Bible talk about? And when we go to our analytics, we'll see that the second word that's analyzed are all these words that follow atzat as a construct. So counsel of an angel, counsel of the Lord, the counsel of the Most High, and so on. Okay, so that's the use of the I'm going to show you a more elegant way of doing this when we get to actual construct searches as distinct from searching for a construct. However, we notice that some of them are just followed by hey, 5 of them, the article the or ha, and so I want to find those, so we'll just put a hey in here. This is automatically a phrase. Okay, accordance just by default is searching for lemmas, and by default is searching for phrase, and now we have found the 3 words that are used with hey in front of it: atzat hayeladim, atzat haskenim, and atzat hasar. Must be somewhere down here. Here we are, atzat hasarim, the princes. Okay, so that's the use of an asterisk to find all words, and we'll be using that in some of the subsequent searches. A tab always selects everything. It's always hard when mixed language because our commands are in English, but our words are in Hebrew, so it's constantly switching the language. It's very awkward. Best thing is just erase it by doing tab and a return, or just tab and typing over it. Now, the other kind of wildcard is the question mark. And again, this may have been covered already, so I apologize if it has. But whereas the asterisk stands for a whole word, the question mark stands for a single character. So for example, we notice here in the last word here is the word Lila. It's a little unusual because it has 4 characters, of which the first and the third are the same. So how does the Bible have any other words with this structure. Okay, now it's common question is how to search for geminate verbs, but there aren't any in this passage, so I didn't choose that as an example. But if you need to see that at the end, I can show it to you. But it's the same idea. We go and we construct our search with a question mark for the first character, no equals, because I'm looking for lemmas, so I don't need quotes, and I'm not including vowels, so I don't need I'm sorry, so I don't need an equal sign, but I'm just going to put a question mark, a question mark, and a question mark. So we've got a 4-letter word where I'm going to say the third letter is the same as the first. So I'm just going to put equals 1. And that just tells me to look for any words. Oh, come on now. Oh, I know. It does need to be inflected. I'm sorry. I know this worked for me, but it's the I'm sorry. No, because I did this, and I know that it works. What did I do wrong? Something wrong. Either I need to put this in brackets, maybe. Sorry, this is an example, as Linda was saying. There we are. No, this is not it. This is, well, I did inflect it, and that's no problem. Yamim and like, yeah, it did. All right, let's go back to this. Okay, it's found the 4-letter roots. But you see the idea, all of these words have the same, it's not exactly the search that I tried myself, but all of these words have the same letter as in the first and the third letter. And so that this is how you can use the single character wildcard, this is especially interesting in Hebrew, to find where the same letter occurs there. I think what I did is I had a yod here instead of a letter, and that's why that I only found fewer. There we are. That's more like what I was doing. So that's the use of the wildcard. Now, the big question with Hebrew, this of course applies with any language. You can use these single character wildcards to find the words that read the same backwards and forwards and so on. But in Hebrew, we have the specific question of how do we search for a vowel and how do we search for cantillation marks? Okay, so going back to our passage here, I noticed that ashrei, the vowel on the sheen, is a shva. So supposing I want to search for every word in Psalm 1 that has a shva on it. Well, first of all, we need to do a range. We have two ways of doing a range. We can do the range command, so Shift Command or Shift Control R if you're on Windows, and I can put Psalm 1, or I can use the range dialog, which I'll show you, the range pop-up menu in a minute. So I'm saying I want to look in Psalm 1, and now I want to look for any word that has a shva on it. So it's simply an asterisk to say any number of, it doesn't, I'm sorry, when I said an asterisk stands for any word, on its own it stands for any word, but combined with other things it stands for any number of letters, or 0. And now I happen to remember that the shva is an option V, but if you don't remember, there is a window called characters. You choose the language you want, so Yehudit for Hebrew, and here is the shva. It tells you it's Shift V, capital V, but it also lets you simply type it so that if I click, it's actually put another one in there. And we're going to use that again in a minute. So I'm going to take off the second one, and I'm going to, because I don't want to look for two shvas and another asterisk. So now I want in Psalm 1 to find all the words that have a V. Now it didn't work because I didn't have an equals on it, and I also need to have quotes. So sorry, no, I need a quote at the end. So quotes to say, look at the inflected form, because, and equal to say, look for the vowels. And now we have found indeed only, we should have found only the vowels that have a shva. there's it is on the resh, there it is on the chaf, there it is on the beit. Okay, so this has correctly found. So you understand what I did. Apart from the range, it's quotes, it's equals because I want to look for vowels, it's an asterisk. The shva has backspace. The asterisk comes before the shva. And so it's any number of characters, a shva, any number of characters. And the quotes. So this is how you would find any word with a shva. Now if we want to put the shva on the second character, as it is in ashrei, it gets a little more complicated. So we're going to remove the shva and the asterisk, and we're going to say three wildcards. Now why three? The reason, and it worked, okay? So there's ashrei with the shva on the second character, there's cheftzo with the shva on the pei, there's yehegei with the shva on the hey. Now, why did I need three wildcards when I wanted on the second character? And this stumped me for a while because it wasn't working for me until I realized that got to take into account the vowel on the first character. Since every character has a vowel, and by the way, this would miss if there was a dagesh in the first character. So it's not, not entirely foolproof, but that's why this is the first question mark stands for first character, second question mark stands for the vowel on the first character, third question mark stands for the second character, and that's the one that has the shva. And it has in fact worked correctly. Okay? I hope I'm not going too fast. I mean, if you feel strongly that this is not working for you, you're free to type your comment. You are muted, so you can't scream, but you can scream on the chat. Now, what about the cantillation marks? This works for the vowel points. You all know, I hope, what cantillation marks are. They are the extra little characters. If I look down here, there's one here. If I look here at Reshaim, it's got two cantillation marks. These little squiggles and little marks and dots and so on that aren't the vowel points. These tell the cantor in the synagogue how to chant the text, and they tell and they do have some meaning. Now, I've never learned them. I don't know them. I don't know what they mean, but they divide phrases and clauses up. So they do contribute to an understanding of the meaning of the text. And so they're probably worth, for some people, they're definitely worth investing in learning. Most Jewish young men have to learn them in order to read the text correctly at their bar mitzvah, so they probably forget it very promptly after that. I know my father never went to synagogue again after his bar mitzvah, so that much good it did him. Anyway, to get back to how do we search for them? Okay, the one that to me is of the most significance is the upside down wishbone here, which is called the atna or etnach. So I want to look for that. The reason that it's most significant is that it divides each verse. Every verse is divided into two parts, and so it's a major division in the thought of every verse. And very often when the Psalms are shown poetically, that's how they'll be divided, with the etnach at the end of the first line. So how do we find characters that are not actual letters and that are not vowels? Well, we use the period. Now, I'm going to, before the period, put some spaces so they don't affect the search, so that you can see then the character, the etnach, being added underneath it. And I'm going to go to my character palette and find the atna. Here it is, option 1, but a simple click will actually add it. So you see it's been added here, and now let's use the other way of doing a range, because I don't want to find it throughout the Bible. I've already created myself a little range for Psalm 1, and so now when I search, it's now found every word in Psalm 1 that has the atna on it. It divides the verse into two. Now you can use the period followed by a single character to find anything. You can use it to find letters. You can use it to find punctuation marks in texts, not in tools, but in texts. You can use it to find any character that you want that's within the text. So it's extremely important for certain searches. Okay, point below the character I'm referring. Oh, over here. No, okay. Sorry, Victor. This is the Etna under the period, and here is the Etna. It's got the cursor under. Of course, it's highlighting. Here's the Etna under the Reshaim, and here it is under Ahmad. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. And my next section was called Click to Expand. And by expand, I really mean amplify. And by amplify in accordance, we mean going to look up more information about our words in the rest of the resources that we have. Now, we have done some amplifying already, because I consider that the search amplify that we did, where we simply right-clicked and did a search for, is a means of amplifying, is one way to amplify. And we have also done analysis of our search results, which is another way to amplify, get information about the word. The shortcut that we all know, those of us who've been with accordance for 25 years, I think it's been there for almost 25 years, is the triple click. So if I triple click on the word be'atzat, I go immediately to my default Hebrew lexicon. And this is extremely useful because not only has it looked for the lexical form, the lexeme etzah, but it has also looked for that scripture reference. And you'll see in a minute why that is so important, but it means that I can simply scroll down in this article and be sure which part of it that relates to this occurrence of the word in Psalm 1. So, of course, not every occurrence is going to be mentioned, but in this case, it is. So that's the triple click amplify, a shortcut, but it only does one thing. It goes to the lexicon that you've chosen in your preferences. The right-click menu that we've already used gives you most common amplify. And again, this should be basic, so I'm not going to go over it, but you can search in text and you can search in all of these different kinds of resources or groups of resources. You can copy, and you have your special copies. People often forget that you can copy as transliteration. You can copy just the lexical forms of your selection and so on. You can copy the instant details and even a location URL to send in an email to somebody or to put on Twitter. You can print, and you have all of these options. These are the common options that you want to do. All of them are available somewhere else. But they're extremely useful because these are the most common ones. Now, all of your Amplify options are in the Amplify menu, which is either in the menu bar at the top of your window in Windows or the top of your screen in the Mac. And these are all the options. So instead of just giving you your favorite lexicon, you have all of your Hebrew lexicons, including the ones that you've put into a subfolder because you don't use them very often. So again, I'm not going to go over all of this, but these are other ways to study the Hebrew. That complete list is also on the toolbar if you have the Amplify button there. Why is it not? Oh, it just has, I'm sorry, I was doing a right click and it should be doing a regular click, and there are all the same options in the Amplify menu. You also have the option of amplifying to whatever you've put on the menu, and a new feature of Accordance is that you can put any module that you want up here. So there's my NIDOT. It's been put up there. So now, having selected Be'atzat, I can simply click on NIDOT, and NIDOT will open and search for my selection. Well, it's not very helpful because it put the bear in. A triple click would have taken out the bear, but this doesn't. So the toolbar is yet another way to amplify. And another useful trick, useful way to amplify, fairly new. So again, older users, I mean, I don't mean older in age, but I mean long-standing users may not realize that the info pane is available. In fact, it is now the default. You have to turn it off. And I had turned it off for this purpose. But the info pane gives you information on your verse. So it talks about, gives you links to all kinds of resources of your choice. You know, you can customize this as you want, but it's mainly information on the whole verse. But what's of particular interest to the Hebrew does give you your top grammars that mention that verse. So you can quickly look in Waltkey and see what he says about the verse. Of course, you can click on it, it'll open Waltkey and it'll give you that information. And it's got this word list, and the word list can be sorted different ways, but the interesting way is not verse order, would just give you the same orders in the verse. Alphabetical might be interesting, but the concentration is interesting. And I knew that concentration sort of meant importance, but I wasn't sure exactly how it was computed, so I went and looked it up in the help. And this is what it says, that the concentration orders the words according to their usage within the immediate context, not necessarily just that verse. Frequently found words within the immediate context, but used relatively rarely in the remainder of the text, are ranked higher in the list. So this Psalm is talking a lot about the Rasha, and about Chet, and about Letzim, which are rarely talked about in the rest of Scripture. These other words are more commonly used in Scripture, even though they're more common. Obviously, the prepositions are more common in the chapter, but they are common throughout Scripture, so therefore they're not as important here. So the concentration tells you a relative sort of ranking of the words as to which words might be particularly significant in this verse. So those are the ways that the info pane can help us to amplify. And the last thing I want to show you is, again, a relatively new feature, and I hope you all know about it. It's been out for about 6 months, the live click. But live click is really amazing, and but it's a little complicated. Okay. So I've turned it on, but before I demonstrate it, I want to show you the preferences. Preferences used to be right here, but now we just click, and they've been combined with the regular preferences, but it will open directly from clicking on the gear. So live click has 3 kinds of lookups. It lets us look up a word in lexicons. It does this in the research pane, and it allows us to select a custom group that I've defined, the Hebrew lexicons that I think are most useful. It'll do a verse lookup, and there we can choose to use the new text browser tab, which is also a new feature, or the research tab to find the verse in either all of our texts or, again, a custom group of texts that I've defined. These texts and these groups are defined in my groups in the library. Word usage is going to search for the word within the entire text, either just in the book or in the entire text, and again, either in all texts or a choice of a subset that we've created in my groups. Same. I've chosen the same subset here. We have other options here with Greek and Hebrew to look up the lexeme or the inflected and key numbers and so on. And delayed I prefer because it lets me do a double click to make a selection. Otherwise, you can't double click because immediately it goes to a live click. So let me show you what it does. We looked up Eitzah in Halot. If I do now that I've turned on the live click, I do a single click on Eitzah, I immediately get my results in my little set of lexicons, and I can go down and see which ones have an article. Do you see how many entries there are with Ein Tzadi Hey? The advantage of the triple click was it went to the right entry, the one with that verse in it. This one is it gives us a broader look, as it were, but it gives us all of the occurrences. It tells us what Naidot says. It looks at the BDB, and it looks at all the fields as well. So it searches through the fields, so it'll find Eitzah in the text of BDB as well as the entries of Eitzah. So a broader search, a very quick search for that word. So you can, as you can see, within a few minutes, you can have searched for all of the interesting words in that verse. It's also done a search on the word usage. Let me close that one to see more of this one. And these are the Hebrew texts in which it found the word Eitzah. And what I thought was really interesting was that the Bible obviously has plenty, and all the different versions of the Bible have pretty similar results. But whereas the Mishnah only has one, and the Judean Desert only has one, the documents from Qumran have double the number that is in the Bible, even though it's a smaller corpus. So the Essenes in Qumran, or whoever wrote those documents, were very interested in the concept of counsel or wisdom. And that's something that you would not have realized without a lot of clicking and searching in there, happening. This lets you do it all in with a single click. Similarly, the single click on the verse reference is going to open the text browser, another new feature of accordance. Now, I've put in a number of Hebrew texts that are going to be basically the same into my subset, but we can choose to go all texts or all Hebrew texts, or we can choose the group which I created. And I put the JPS just so you see this is the right verse for those who don't read Hebrew quite as fast. But we've got here the Targum and the Peshitta, or whatever versions you want. You can actually show all of your Bibles in here. I mean, I'll do it. We now have all our Bibles in the order they are in the library, and with this verse, and so it's very easy to compare the translation in every verse. So that's a text browser, and the quick way to get to it. There are other ways, but the quick way to get to it is with a live click on and clicking on a verse. So that's my very quick review of amplifying, of expanding. Now we want to go to building a complex search, adding complexity. And the first way to add complexity is with the commands. Now, the commands are all the same, basically, as, I need to click in here, as are used in all of the other texts. So we're not going to go over all of them. They're basically the same idea, but there are a few of them that have particular relevance to or adaptations for the Hebrew text, and that's what I wanted to show you. So the first one I want to show you is the hits command. The hits command is extremely useful for one for one very common question we get on the forums all the time. How do I get a list of all the words in this passage? So you simply set a range of the passage, whether you use the range command or not, and you search for the asterisk, which searches for all words. And to get all the words, and then to get the list, is the analysis which we've already done. There's a list of all the words, and we can sort them any way we want. And so super easy to see the most common words and the least common words that are used in the passage. Okay, but I want to adapt this for something else. What I want to say is that I want to find the words that are used in Psalm 1 that are not used in the rest of Psalms. Okay, I think that might be of interest. I'm sure you can all think of ways to do it, to apply this particular kind of command. So my range is going to be Psalm 2 through 150. And so now I've got all the words used in the book of Psalms except for Psalm 1. And now I'm going to duplicate this tab. So now in here, I'm going to look in Psalm 1. So we've put back our range of Psalm 1. And I'm looking for all words in Psalm 1 that are not in the in that first tab. So how do I do that? First of all, at is going to tell it that it's all words except for, or using this additional criterion. Then I'm going to put a not in, all words that are not. And then I use the hits command, which is Shift Command H, or you can use it off the menu. And see, we have a problem with duplicate book names, but we'll sort that out in a minute. So here I've picked this window, and I've got some hidden windows. That's why that came up like that. And so I'm saying all words in Psalm 1 that are not found and not on the hit list from that other window. And so we find that only two lemmas, only two lexical forms, lexemes, are unique to Psalm 1 versus the rest of Psalms. Leitzim means scoffer, and alehu, which means leaves. Now, the way you can modify the hits command is that you can put an equal sign here, and you can do equal tag, which I'm not going to go into, but that would find any grammatical forms that were unique, which there aren't any. I tried it. But I'm going to look for inflected forms that are unique, and it turns out there are more, because when you do equal inflected, it is doing an exact search. It is looking at the voweling, and I checked on this. I thought, well, surely, a mud or halach occurs in the rest of the Psalms. Well, it does, but not with this exact voweling. So these are uniquely voweled inflected forms, unique to Psalm 1 versus the rest of Psalms. Is that fairly clear? This is quite common, that people want to see what is different about the vocabulary in one passage from another passage. And that's how you do it. You have to have the two windows, and I'll just go over it again real briefly, although I see our time is running away from us as I knew it would. Here we are looking at all words in this particular range, which is the rest of Psalms. And here we are looking at all words in this range, which is Psalm 1, all words at not the hit list of inflected forms from the first window. So I hope that's clear to you, and I hope it's helpful. Now, the next command, and I think I'm going to skip the third one, but which is the merge command with the mtlxx. If anybody wants to look that one up, you can. It was on my list, but I'm going to skip it because of time. So I want to do an infer, and an infer means I want to find references that or inferences or allusions to the verses. So I'm just going to take Psalm 1, just put Psalm 1 in my first window. Now I've got an error, and that was deliberate that I left this on here. You notice that this went from grey to black. When this is black, it means this search does not match these results. So beware. If you see a window like this and you say, oh, this is giving me the hits from there, but I go look at that and it doesn't make sense, because in here I'm displaying Psalm 1, so that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense because it tried to run the search and it couldn't. Okay, but I don't want that. I want to use the infer command, and again, I'm going to take the words from the first window, and the range, I'm now going to look in Proverbs. So I want to see if Proverbs has any inferences from Psalm 1, and it didn't. And the reason it didn't is quite simple. It's because my infer is a bit too narrow. So my infer was saying find every 6-word phrase and only allow one word to be dropped or added. I'm going to tweak this by saying that I'm going to allow 2 words to be added, dropped, and I'm going to ignore the word order. And I still want to put my range in, because otherwise it's going to look in the whole Bible. And so now we have a lot of verses in the Proverbs that seem to possibly be alluding to Psalm 1. Now I know this is a vague allusion, and especially with the reverse order, it's particularly vague, but you can see that these verses are talking about walking, they're talking about the wicked and the righteous and the contrast between them. So they may well have a connection with Psalm 1. So once again, with the infer command, you're taking a passage, you're defining a passage. Make this one the short one and the other one the long one is much easier to do. The other section that you're looking in, it can be longer. If this is long, it takes the search just takes longer time. So every 6-word phrase, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the next phrase would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So every possible 6-word phrase, plus or minus 2 words. That's what we've defined. In either direction, that's what the plus does. If I take out the plus, it'll actually be fewer results. Instead of 41, it's only 7. It's found in the second range that we're looking in. It has found verses which seem to be alluding to, or the other way around. Maybe Psalm 1 was written after Proverbs. It is alluding to all of the wisdom in Proverbs. So that's the infer command, and this again can be tailored with an inflected form if you want to, with the equal I for the inflected form. So I'm going to move on now to constructs, and I know that constructs are extremely important in Hebrew, but they also can be a little confusing. So once again, I've tabbed to select my entry box. I'm going to open a construct. It's down in the new tab, way down. It used to be in the new menu, but you know, let's add so many other things. Command or Control-3 is the easy way to do the Hebrew construct. The construct, the idea of the construct is every column represents a word. And the area above the columns represents the connections between those words. So there's also, you have the option of searching in both directions, but it's always a phrase. So if you have 3 or 4, it's always going to be in one order or the reverse order, and not just ignoring the word order as the infer did. And where they used to be for many years, the columns were always assumed to be adjacent. They no longer are assumed to be adjacent. If you want them to be adjacent, you have to specify that. Now I'm going to do a rather simple one that I just tried, and it really worked nicely. So I'm going to take our word etzah, which also can mean to shut, but it doesn't mean it. And I want it to be, again, this is the same search basically as we did before, but you see how much easier it is to see what we're doing. I'm saying a noun, it's the same dialogue. Concordance always uses the same interface if it can. So I've defined this word, and it could be either way. I mean, it doesn't matter whether the lex is at the top or the bottom. It's a construct noun, and the lexical or lexeme is etzah. The second word can be any word. So again, we'll put in our lex and we'll put in an asterisk. And I'm going to say that they should be within 2 words. 2 words meaning 1 to 2, or I could leave 1 to 2. But I want to allow only a hey, only the article to come in between. So again, now the inter tells me what can occur between the two, but it doesn't have to, or it may not. So that if you can't leave it blank, you have to define it, so that I can define it with a lex hey, or I can define it as an article. It doesn't matter which way I do it. And I'm just going to say that the only word that can occur between these two is the article hey. Okay, and so now it has picked up both of the searches that we did before, where we found Atzat Ahitophel, but when we go down to Kings, 1 Kings, it's found Atzat Haskenim. We couldn't do that in the search, but we can do it here because of inter. Inter and agree are the only conditions, are 2 conditions which you cannot do. You can use within up here, but you cannot use, I'm sorry, about the phone call. And so inter is unique to the construct. So first of all, it's very easy to see what we did, and we can modify it. And secondly, it got specific things that you cannot do anywhere else. So let me open another construct that I created also based on this verse, a little more complicated, but I'm sorry, just give me a second. That's my phone call. I'm doing the webinar. Yes, bye. Sorry. Sorry about that. He knew very well. I mean, he should have known. I'm sorry. No, I lost my thread. So I noticed in Psalm 1 this use of blessed with this other very common word, asher, that means which or that. And I wondered how many other places the root asher was followed by a word with the same root but a different lexical form, and that's what the agree does. So what I did here is the root asher, when it's not a proper name. I didn't care about Ashur and Syria as the first of the words. I mean, in fact, it occurs here in the second word. And I said within 6 words. Doesn't matter how far apart they are. And I want them to agree in roots. I want them both to have the root asher, but I don't want them to be the same lexeme. And so I found 22 verses, 22 places, 20 verses, but 22 occurrences of this particular construction. I hope you see what I did, because obviously I don't have time to go over it again, and we're not even getting to the syntax. If anybody needs to go, they're welcome. I think I'm going to try and show you a little bit of syntax, but if you need to go, of course, we perfectly understand it is being recorded and it will be available to all the attendees and possibly posted on the web. Now I did another construction here, and that was also based on Psalm 1:1. I was fascinated by these 3 verbs. Halach, he stands, I mean, he walks, he stands, and he sits. This progression of these 3 verbs don't occur anywhere else. I already tried in one verse. So I thought, well, let me see if 3 words, 3 verbs, verb, a verb, a verb, that don't agree in lexical form. So I've got connections between the first and the second and the third, and the first and the third. None of them agree in lexical form, but they do agree in their grammar. They do have the same gender, number, person, and stem. And where does that occur in the book of Psalms? Now, I've got a range of Psalms. We're looking within a verse only, that's the scope. And here's where it occurs. And it was rather fascinating when I did a hits graph that for some reason it slopes off. In other words, a lot of early Psalms have a lot of these 3 verbs in them, but later on towards the end of Psalms, they seem to tailor off. Don't ask me why. That's another subject for a paper that somebody could do some research on that. So I hope you'd like to look at the syntax now, because I know that I've sort of rushed through this part. I'm sorry, I knew that would happen. But on the other hand, would I share those workspaces? Yes, I've saved the workspaces. Can you post files, Linda?
Yes, if you'll just share those workspaces with me, I can upload them.
Post them, yeah. Okay. These 2 would require, though, that you have both syntax modules in order to, these ones are on the syntax, but the others, they don't require you to have anything other than the Hebrew Bible, the HMTW4. Well, and the JPS, or the JPS side won't open. Syntax. We used to call our tagging grammatical tagging, and that was really wrong, because what the basic tagging is morphological. It says what the word, from the form of the word, what it is. It's a verb, it's in the kal stem, it's perfect tense, and it's third person masculine singular. That doesn't tell you what function it performs within the sentence. That's what the syntax does. We have currently 2 syntax databases. The original one is Holmstead syntax, HMTW4 syntax, now free upgrade from the previous one, and it was developed in concurrence with accordance. It was developed for accordance. Accordance was developed for that syntax Dr. Robert Holmstead and Roy worked together to make this work with the syntax. So that's our syntax is not quite complete. He's sort of bogged down in the book of Isaiah, although he wouldn't like to say so. I mean, doesn't like to, well, he's admitted it to us. Isaiah has gone very, very slowly. It's very difficult to work out the syntax of Isaiah, apparently. But that's the original syntax that we have had now in development for a number of years. 2 years ago, we added the ETCBC. I used to know what ETCBC stands for, but you know what? I don't remember, so we'll use about this text, and it doesn't even tell us there. No, okay, I remember it as being etc. BC, but anyway, it used to be known as WIVU. So Hebrew scholars for years have been referring to the WIVU database, but they changed their name to be ETCBC. So this is the MT, the Masoretic text with the ETCBC morphology. And it's very different from Holmsted's, but we've made it work the same way. So you've got different data compiled by different people. There's a long-standing, and Victor's asking, are there differences with Shebank? That is the same database. I can't make head or tail of Shebank and how to do queries. So yes, the data is the same, but your queries and probably your results will be slightly different. But the data is the same as the Shebank. I mean, we've had this 2 years. I don't think we've updated it. So what we have is what they had 2 years ago. So there's an old Jewish joke that if you have 2 Jews in a room, you have 3 opinions. You know. So obviously, when you look at Ashrei, and we already saw that Westminster defined it as a particle interjection, and Holmstead just says it's a complement. I mean, he doesn't disagree. Over here on the ETCBC, it says it's a noun, common masculine plural construct. So don't ask me because I'm really not familiar, certainly don't know what their rules were for tagging. This is different tagging. The text is essentially the same. It's the Stuttgart text. But the tagging, it was done by ETCBC, and so it is different, but not only is the tagging somewhat different, it's not entirely. I mean, ish is a noun, they add term distributive, but masculine singular absolute, that's masculine singular absolute, it's the same. They both define it as a subject. So that is the first way that you use the syntax. When you add the syntax, it adds that little tag at the bottom in parentheses that says what function is this word performing in the sentence. It's the subject. And they both agree that the ish is the subject. Well, actually, this one doesn't, but on the whole, they do. So you have the tagging that you can see. You can also search the tagging. So here I've opened the Hebrew. I've done a search for ish, and I've got no, I don't have that many because it's black. So I've got over almost 2,200 occurrences of ish. I can add the tag just like the parts of speech. If you have the syntax, you will have all of the tags that belong to that syntax. This one is for the Holmstead syntax. If I was searching the WIVU syntax, I would have a different list of tags, and here we have found now 882 places where the man is the subject of the sentence. So you can see the tag in the instant details, and you can search the tag in the regular entry box. Then you have the syntax tree, and this is our development. We're very proud of it. We think it's beautiful. It's been upgraded fairly recently. In fact, it looks a lot better if we make it larger. And this tells you the relationship between the words. Now, there are some ways in which Holmstead is simpler than ETCBC. There are some ways in which ETCBC is simpler. If I go down to verse 2, you will see that Holmstead has defined verse 2 as part of all the same sentence as verse 1, because these things are going up there somewhere. Whereas ETCBC has put each little section, but he walks in the way, he delights in the law of the Lord, and in the law he meditates day and night, are two separate little units. So it's a simpler structure on the whole in in the ETCBC than it is in Holmstead, where he has made this all part of one big sentence, where N, again, if you mouse over the tree, you've got a lot of information. It highlights the entire sentence, if it's a sentence, or the clause, if it's a clause, or the word, if it's a word. But Holmstead has made this all one sentence, so it's very complicated with a subject phrase, which has an adjunct to it, and a appositive, and another appositive, and don't ask me, okay, because I've never studied grammar. But where ETCBC has made it complicated, even though their structures look more simple, is they've got so many different types of everything. So the conjunction, that's okay, but a coordinated clause, discursive, WXQO, WEX, catal, null clause, what on earth does that mean? Fortunately, we do have some help. First of all, we have a module which I thought I was showing, but it may be in this other one. No, not there, just a second. We do have a module in the library for Holmstead, which is an introduction to syntax, and it's now the Hebrew syntax guide, and it is a very useful book written by Roy Brown, who did the programming, and Robert Holmstead, who did and Martin Abegg also, who have developed the whole syntax and done the tagging, so has John Cook. So highly recommended. If you have the syntax, you have this module, please read it. Read the history, read about the terms, you've got examples, you've got discussion of the background. Holmstead's syntax is cutting-edge linguistics. It's modern linguistics, but it's a bit hard for those of us who did our grammar back in high school to really understand what he means, that there is no such thing as a subject, everything is a complement, and so on. It's cutting-edge linguistics. He also actually talks about the WIVU database in his shebang and Anderson Forms. We are getting Anderson Forbes, but that's going to be a whole other task to adapt appropriate that for accordance. Now, there is help for the WIVU, not much, but there's a document on the website. If you go to the ETCBC page or to our document downloads, you will see the glossary of the ETCBC, and Michal, who did a lot of the work to get this ready and sadly passed away very soon after it was finished, she put together this glossary, and I'm sure she was given, the terms, but she put this together as a PDF. So this is very helpful if you want to know what ETCBC means by the regens and the rectum and so on. As a physician, to me, rectum means something quite different, but anyway, we shouldn't go there. So back to accordance and the use of the syntax. So firstly, you've got the tagging on the words, and you can search on the words. Secondly, you have the tree, and you can look at and study the structure of the phrase. And then thirdly, you can search for it in a construct. And that does really get complicated. So I did one, I set it up here. So the first thing I did, what happened to this? Okay, is simply say, okay, one has the word lo 3 times in a verse. Okay, where else does that occur? And this is nothing to do with syntax, but I went ahead and searched for it, and there are lots of places. There are lots of 332 hits for that construct. 191 verses where the word lo occurs 3 times. Okay, but the structure of each verse is going to be quite different. So what I did then is I went and looked at the ETCBC, and I said, how does it construct this? And it has got 3 of these coordinated discursive clauses within an attributive clause, and each one of them has the word lo in it. So this is how I use syntax when I use it, which admittedly is not very often, is to look at a structure and say, where else does this structure occur? How would I find where else the structure occurs? I can't look through all of those verses in the results over here to see is the structure at all similar. And this looks a bit similar, but these are separate sentences, the empty. So I constructed a construct which is not terribly complicated. It's the same, it's similar in that you have got the list of terms, and the list of terms varies. I'm not going to switch it because if I switch from ETCBC to Holmstead, I lose all of this. But if you choose which type of syntax you're searching, which database you're searching, and you have an appropriate set of objects, items that you can put in to create. So I've created an attributive clause. I created a coordinated clause under it with low in it, and then I simply Option or Alt dragged that to create 3 of them. So let me show you how that works. So this is a clause, so I can make another one over here, put in the clause. And the problem with ETCBC is it's much more sophisticated than all of this, than in Holmstead, because you've got all of these kinds of clause, and then you've got all of these relations. You see. So I chose, because I looked and I saw it was an attributive clause, and I just left the type as any. Okay, I mean, this worked, believe me. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. You notice that unlike these kind of the regular objects, when you drag them in, they just go into one column. The clauses and phrases go over 2 columns and can expand to more. So then I created another clause, coordinated D clause here, and so that now automatically, you see how it expanded the attributive clause so that I've still got space to put in another one, and it gave me 2 spaces and I could do more. And then I simply put lex low. Let me just drag it from here for time's sake, and put lex low in there, and then I selected this and Option dragged that into here, and now it expanded again and gave me 2. Now I can remove all of these because I don't need it. Again, if you remove the one above, it removes everything that's below it. I guess I dragged one of those instead of doing 2, so restore it to what it was. Yeah, wrong key, sorry. There we are. Anyway, the result of my search is this. This is the result of that search. Only in Psalm 1.1 has ETCBC defined this particular construction. Okay, exactly like this. So that's how you can search very, very powerfully. Now, we're going to have to get one of the developers of syntax to do a webinar if we want one that really goes into the details of how you use all of these things, what the depth means, because you can change that. You can increase the depth to say, you know, you're looking lower. I don't think it'll make any difference here, but there's so many knobs on these things that I can't go into now, and in any case we're 15 minutes over time. All right, now you asked some questions here. Somebody asked whether there's a special discount for MTLX ETCBC. No, there isn't. It's really nicely differences between 2 grammar interpretation versions. Please do that. Now, I don't know what you mean by the differences between 2 grammar. I mean, okay, I think I know what you mean. Let me show you something. Let me go back to the other syntax. We have a compare texts. Okay, compare text is going to highlight the differences between the 2 texts, irrelevant of the syntax. Okay, but we do have options. As we have options on so many things, we can compare the tags. So this now is highlighting the differences in the tags between ETCBC and HMT. And I don't know if that's what you mean, but it's just highlighting them. It's not. Now, it will give us a list of them. We're only showing Psalm 1. So hopefully if I go up to display and I say list the text differences, it's only going to do it for Psalm 1, and it is. And so here you see, I'm sorry, I just closed it. You all have no idea how stressful this is, how exhausting it is. So, but since it doesn't display the tags, even though it's showing differences in tags, it's just showing us where the differences are. But this function of list text differences doesn't actually display the tag differences. So for that, what you would have to do is select all, and it's done a live click on me, so I should turn off the live click. So I've selected all this text, and I now go to my language Amplify, and I do the parsing. And when I do the parsing, I can, of course, expand this, and I can display whatever I want. This all is basic to accordance, really. So if we just say that we don't want the lexical and we don't want the root form, but we just want to see the tags, we don't want to see the syntax, or maybe we do. And we don't need the English translation. I just want to make it a little more compact. So here is the parsing of the HMTW4 in Psalm 1. And now we can minimize that one and do the same thing over here. So ETCBC, select all, look up the parsing, set its parsing, Command T, not to show the lexical and the root, not to show the gloss, I think is what we said. And so now we can put these side by side, except that we don't have room. So again, what I'm going to do is detach the tab and close the library, and then drag this tab. Drag this tab into, come on now, this zone, here we go, into here. And now you've got, let's take off the instant details, and now you have got side by side the parsing of Psalm 1:1 with including the syntax. Can you share how your library is organized? Okay, I think we should stop. Okay, I'm glad you think this is cool. All right, so here you can side by side, and they won't scroll together, but at least you can scroll them yourself and compare. There's Reshaim as an adjective and an adjunct, and there it's an adjective, but it's a rectum subphrase, but they're both masculine plural. So you can hand by hand to a comparison. I think we should close the session. I'm sure some people have, exhausted or had to go, and I'll take questions then, but we won't be recording anymore. Is that okay, Linda?